What's the moment in your life that felt like a scene from a movie? Some nights feel scripted, like the city itself is conspiring to give you a story you'll never forget. I was 24, broke, and reckless, living in Paris on a student visa that was about to expire. It was spring, the kind of spring Paris is famous for, when the rain is soft, the air smells like bread and flowers, and even the pigeons seem romantic. That night, my roommate and I decided to crash a party. Not just any party, one of those rooftop affairs high above Montmartre, hosted by people far cooler and richer than us. We didn't know anyone, didn't have an invite, just the address scribbled on a scrap of paper. When we arrived, the bouncer barely glanced at us. We slipped in, grabbed cheap plastic flutes of champagne, and tried to look like we belonged. For a while it worked. We sipped, laughed, leaned against the wrought iron railings and watched Paris glitter below. The Eiffel Tower sparkled on the hour, music thumped through hidden speakers. Then someone recognized us, or rather, realized they didn't. A man in a sharp suit, talking urgently into a headset, pointed directly at us. We froze. He pointed again, shouting something I couldn't hear over the music. Security! My roommate bolted. I followed, heart pounding, weaving through the crowd. We burst down a side staircase, clattering down flights, breathless with adrenaline. We spilled out into an alley, dark, wet, reeking of old wine and smoke. No one behind us. We laughed. Loud, reckless, gasping laughter. The kind you only hear when you're young and stupid and invincible. As we rounded the corner, a taxi screeched to a halt right in front of us. Without a word, we dove inside. The driver barely glanced back. Just pulled away fast, as if he already knew we needed an escape. The city blurred by, neon lights smeared across the windows. We leaned back against the cracked leather seats, sweaty, euphoric, alive. For a moment, Paris was ours. It didn't feel real. It felt like a scene ripped straight from a French New Wave film. Black and white, cigarette smoke curling in slow motion, Edith Piaf warbling on a crackling radio. Years later, whenever life feels too ordinary, I think about that night, about stolen champagne, rooftop views, and the wild, reckless magic of youth. No scriptwriter could have penned it better. New York doesn't care about your schedule, or your sanity. It was a cold November afternoon, the kind where the wind slices through your coat and makes you question every life choice that led you to leave the house. I was late, again. Sprinting through Penn Station, dodging tourists, suitcases, the smell of stale pretzels and burnt coffee heavy in the air. I had exactly 5 minutes to catch the last express train home. Miss it, and I'd be stuck in the city overnight, broke and miserable. The board flashed my platform, 15B, clear across the station. I ran. Full sprint. My bag slammed against my hip with every step. I hurdled a stray stroller, sidestepped a man arguing with a hot dog vendor, slipped between rows of commuters like a linebacker. Ahead, I saw the train doors starting to close. A conductor stood in the doorway, indifferent. I shouted. Not words, just a guttural sound of desperation. He glanced at me, unimpressed, and tapped the button. The doors began to slide shut. I don't know what came over me. Adrenaline, stupidity, pure movie magic. But I dove. Full leap. Both feet off the ground, bag sailing behind me. I slid across the floor of the train, banging my knee, narrowly avoiding the legs of a stunned businessman. The doors slammed shut behind me with a final hiss. The conductor smirked. Cutting it close, huh? I sat there, gasping, knees throbbing, feeling like I'd just pulled off a stunt in a heist movie. The businessman shook his head, half disapproving, half impressed. For the rest of the ride, I stared out the window at the blur of lights and dark, grinning like an idiot. Sometimes life doesn't wait for you to catch up. Sometimes you have to leap. Some moments don't need words, just music. I was in Buenos Aires chasing a fantasy of learning tango in its birthplace. I wasn't very good. 2 left feet, stiff posture, a brain that overthought every step. One night, wandering through the San Telmo district, I stumbled on an outdoor milonga, an open-air dance where locals gathered under strings of yellow lights. Couples moved gracefully across the worn cobblestones, the music low and smoky, ancient as the city itself. I stood at the edge, watching, feeling utterly out of place. Then, a tap on my shoulder. I turned. A woman, maybe mid-30s, hair pulled back, eyes sharp and amused, held out her hand without a word. I hesitated. clumsy, embarrassed. But she only smiled. Patient. I took her hand. She led. I followed. We moved, slow, measured steps, the music weaving around us. At first I stumbled. She pressed her hand lightly against my back, guiding me. No words, just the press of her palm, the shift of her weight, the tilt of her head. And somehow, we danced. For 3 songs we moved like that. Silent, synchronized, the world narrowing to the sound of a bandoneon and the feel of her hand in mine. When the final note faded, she stepped back, gave a small nod, and disappeared into the crowd. I never got her name, never saw her again. But for those few minutes, under the warm lights of San Telmo, I wasn't a clumsy tourist. I was part of the dance, a scene straight from a movie. No dialogue, just music, and a memory that still feels like magic. The Highlands are beautiful and terrifyingly empty at night. I was driving a rental car along a winding, fog-shrouded road. No GPS signal, no cell service, nothing but the occasional sheep and the sound of tires on wet asphalt. It was supposed to be a quick drive back to my inn. It wasn't. Halfway there, the car sputtered and died. No warning. Just a final cough from the engine and silence. I sat there, blinking at the dashboard, heart sinking. Outside, mist curled against the windows. Darkness pressed in on all sides. No traffic, no lights, just me, stranded. I popped the hood, not that I knew what I was looking for, and stared helplessly at the steaming engine. Then, headlights, a single pair, cutting through the fog. I stepped back, wary. The car pulled up slowly. A man rolled down the window, middle-aged, heavy coat, weathered face, kind eyes. "Need a hand?" he asked in a thick Scottish accent. I nodded, relief washing over me. He tinkered under the hood for a few minutes, muttering to himself. Then, as suddenly as it died, the engine roared back to life. "Lucky you," he said with a grin. "Not many cars pass here at this hour." I thanked him profusely. He waved it off, got back in his car, and drove away. His taillights swallowed by the mist. I made it to the inn without another hitch. Later, I found out that stretch of road was notorious. Accidents, breakdowns, worse. Locals called it the Ghost Road because help almost never came. But that night it did. Just like a perfectly timed rescue in a thriller movie. Some moments feel like they belong in a rom-com, minus the cheesy soundtrack. I was in Madrid, about to leave after a whirlwind study abroad semester. It was early morning, sky still smeared with the last traces of night. My taxi was stuck in traffic miles from the airport, the clock ticking down mercilessly toward my boarding time. The problem wasn't just missing the flight. The problem was her, Elena. We had met in a language class, bonded over bad grammar and worse coffee. It was messy, complicated. One of those could-be, might-have-been stories. And now, I was about to leave without saying goodbye properly. A rushed text. That was it. Staring out the taxi window, I made a split-second decision. "Pull over," I told the driver. I grabbed my bag, tossed a few bills at him, and jumped out into the morning chill. Phone in hand, I texted her one word. "Wait." Then I ran. Through narrow streets, past sleepy cafes and yawning shopkeepers pulling up metal gates. My bag thumped against my side, my lungs burned, my heart hammered harder with every step. I reached her apartment just as she was stepping out, suitcase in hand. She blinked, stunned. Neither of us said anything. I just dropped my bag, took her face in my hands and kissed her, right there on the cracked sidewalk under a sky turning gold with sunrise. When we pulled apart, she laughed, that same laugh I had memorized without realizing it, and said, "About time." We didn't make our flights that day. Some goodbyes aren't meant to be rushed. Only in Vegas could a disaster turn into a story straight out of a buddy comedy. I was there for a conference. Not exactly the wild Sin City escapade most people dream about. After a 14-hour day of lectures and panel discussions, all I wanted was a hot shower and an early night. I slid my keycard into the door of room 1812, pushed it open, and stopped dead. There, sprawled on one of the beds, was a guy in nothing but boxers, eating cold pizza straight from the box, watching a nature documentary at full blast. We stared at each other. He looked just as horrified as I felt. Wrong room?" I stammered. He squinted at me, wiped his hands on the sheets, and grabbed a crumpled receipt from the nightstand. 1812, right? I pulled out my key card. Same room number. We both started laughing. That kind of exhausted, punchy laughter that comes when your brain is too tired to handle absurdity. Turns out, there had been a glitch at the front desk. 2 bookings, 1 room. We marched down to the reception together, pizza box and all, demanding answers. The manager was mortified, offered us upgrades, free drinks, and endless apologies. Instead of taking separate rooms, we decided to stick with the free suite. 2 bedrooms, way fancier than anything we could afford. That night, over overpriced cocktails and terrible casino karaoke, we became friends. Still are. Years later. Only in Vegas. In movies, missed buses are always disasters. Sometimes, in real life, they're exactly what you need. I was backpacking through Turkey, trying to check Cappadocia's surreal landscapes off my bucket list. Early morning, packed and ready, I stood at a dusty roadside stop, waiting for the bus to take me to the next city. I waited and waited. An hour passed. 2. Locals shrugged sympathetically, but offered no explanation. The bus, it seemed, simply wasn't coming. Frustrated, sweating under the relentless sun, I considered hitchhiking. Then a rusted pickup truck pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind smile and a battered baseball cap, leaned out. "Need a ride?" he said in halting English. I hesitated, every warning about hitchhiking flashing through my brain. But something about his smile, about the casual way he gestured at the empty passenger seat, made me nod. We drove for hours through landscapes that looked like another planet. Towering stone chimneys, valleys painted in shades of rose and gold. He didn't speak much English. I didn't speak much Turkish. We communicated with gestures, laughter, shared snacks. When we reached the next town, he refused any money, just gave me a firm handshake and a nod before driving off. Later, I learned that day there had been a scheduling mishap. The bus route had been canceled last minute. If he hadn't picked me up, I would have been stranded overnight with no food, no shelter. Sometimes the bus doesn't come because a better ride is waiting. Some dinners are unforgettable for the wrong reasons, and some for the right ones. I was in Florence, traveling solo after quitting a job I hated. I wanted to clear my head, to lose myself in art and pasta and narrow medieval streets. One night, I wandered into a tiny trattoria recommended by a fellow traveler. It was cozy. White tablecloths, candles, the smell of garlic and fresh bread thick in the air. I took a seat by the window, ordered a glass of red wine, and started reading a dog-eared novel I'd dragged across Europe. Halfway through my meal, homemade gnocchi so good it could make you cry, the lights went out. Total blackout. Gasps filled the room. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered in the darkness. A few nervous laughs. The hum of conversation dipped into an uncertain murmur. I fumbled for my phone flashlight, but before I could switch it on, a voice nearby said, "Don't." A match flared, and a candle was lit on a neighboring table. Then, another and another. Within minutes, the room was glowing softly, shadows dancing across the walls. The waiters moved from table to table, lighting more candles, turning the blackout into something intimate and magical. People laughed, relaxed. Strangers at different tables started talking, sharing food, wine, stories. The man at the next table leaned over and said, "Looks like we're dining by candlelight." We clinked glasses, an unspoken toast to the unexpected. We spent the rest of the night talking about books, about travel, about regrets and new beginnings. No phones, no distractions. Just 2 strangers, a bottle of wine, and a room full of candlelight. When the lights finally flickered back on, the spell broke, but the connection didn't. We spent the next week exploring Florence together. Museums, cafes, sun-drenched piazzas. I never learned if the blackout was real or staged. Honestly, I don't want to know. Some moments are better left unexplained, like perfect scenes from a movie you get to live in, even if only for a while. You don't expect life-changing moments to happen at 2 a.m., barefoot in a hotel hallway. I was in Chicago for a work conference, staying at one of those cookie-cutter hotels, all beige carpet and forgettable art on the walls. The kind of place you forget as soon as you leave. At 2:03 a.m., the fire alarm blared. I woke up disoriented, heart racing, brain foggy. I grabbed my room key, threw on a hoodie, and stumbled out into the hallway. Barefoot, bleary-eyed, half convinced it was a false alarm. The hallway was packed with similarly confused people. A few laughed nervously. Most looked annoyed. I leaned against the wall, waiting for the inevitable announcement that it was all a mistake. That's when I noticed her, sitting cross-legged on the floor, pajama pants, messy bun, reading a battered copy of Pride and Prejudice like nothing was happening. Something about the absurdity, a fire alarm in Jane Austen, made me smile. She looked up, caught me staring, and smirked. "Nothing like a little Regency romance during a fire drill," she said. I sat down across from her. We started talking about books, bad conference coffee, the weirdness of hotels. When the all clear finally came, faulty sensor, no real fire, we stayed sitting there, talking until the hallway emptied. We grabbed breakfast the next morning. Breakfast turned into lunch. Lunch turned into exploring the city. 2 years later, she moved in with me. A box of battered paperbacks, the first thing she unpacked. Sometimes the best meet-cutes don't happen in coffee shops or on dating apps. Sometimes they happen at 2 a.m., barefoot in the middle of a fake fire alarm,